In the dense woods of Bear Brook State Park, nestled in the small town of Allenstown, New Hampshire, two brothers set out for a day of hunting on a crisp November morning in 1985. As they navigated the rugged terrain, something unusual caught their eye. An old rusted oil barrel curiously turned on its side, just off the trail. Intrigued and unsettled, one of the brothers approached. What he saw next would change the course of their lives forever. Sticking out from the barrel was a bone, a foot. The police arrived at the scene, and their investigation quickly revealing a gruesome discovery within the barrel. The skeletal remains of a young adult woman between the ages of 23 and 33 lay eerily undisturbed. Alongside her, the fragile bones of a child, no more than 11 years old, rested silent, witness to an unspeakable crime. The mystery deepened as the identities of the victims remain unknown. The case, cold and haunting, lingered in the minds of the investigators and the community for years. Then in 2000, a startling twist emerged. Not far from when the first barrel was discovered was another barrel that was found, this time containing the remains of two more young children. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town once again, reviving a mystery that had seemed almost forgotten. Who were these victims? What dark secrets did the barrels hold? And who was responsible for these horrific acts? This is a chilling mystery of the Bear Brook State Park, a case that baffled investigators for decades and left the community searching for answers. We'll go into the heart of darkness, piecing together the puzzle of the Bear Brook murders and seeking justice for the victims from the woods. Hello, I'm John Cordray, and I'm a licensed mental health therapist. And today I will be analyzing Terry Rasmussen, aka the Chameleon Killer. I will provide details of the case and then provide my analysis and give feedback on the aftermath of the crimes. Welcome to Inside Killer Minds. Who was Terry Rasmussen? Why did he kill the victims? What made him commit these heinous crimes? We may never know the full extent of the savage mind of Terry Rasmussen. On December 23, 1943, Terry Rasmussen was born in Colorado. His early life seemed ordinary, growing up in Phoenix, Arizona with his family and then moving to Hawaii, where he married in 1968. The newlyweds returned to Arizona, welcoming twin daughters in 1969. By 1970, Rasmussen had become a qualified electrician, and the growing family relocated to Redwood, California, where two more children were born in 1970 and 1972. But beneath the surface, darkness was brewing. Following a brief separation, the Rasmussens returned back to Phoenix, and it was there in the early 1970s that Terry Rasmussen's sinister web of deception and violence began to unravel. Rasmussen's first brush with the law came in Arizona, where he was arrested in the early 70s. By June 1975, he faced charges of aggravated assault. His wife has seen enough. She left him shortly after, taking their children with her. The man who once seemed like a typical family man began a new life. A life of lies, manipulation, and murder. Under the alias Bob Evans, Rasmussen drifted toward New Hampshire in the late 1970s, and there his killing spree likely began. One of his early known victims was Denise Bowden, a young mother of Goffstown, New Hampshire. Struggling with financial troubles, Denise and her boyfriend, Bob Evans, visited her family for Thanksgiving in November 1981. After that holiday dinner, they vanished. Denise's mother believed her daughter might have fled to escape her debts, but she never saw her again. Authorities suspect that Rasmussen took Denise to California and killed her, though her body was never found. In January 1986, at the Holiday Host RV Park in Scotts Valley, California, a man named Gordon Jensen appeared. With him was his 5-year-old daughter, Lisa. But Gordon Jensen was just another alias, Terry Rasmussen, hiding behind yet another false identity. By June of that year, Rasmussen suggested an older couple he had recently met adopt his daughter. He left Lisa with them for a trial period, promising to return, but he never did, and Lisa was placed in protective custody. Unbeknownst to the authorities at the time, Lisa was not even his daughter. Rasmussen, who had previously been arrested under the name Curtis Mayo Kimbo, was now wanted for child abandonment. It wasn't until March 1989 that he was finally arrested, serving a brief sentence before disappearing once more, this time under the name Larry Vanner. Meanwhile, back in New Hampshire, the Bear Brook case had gone cold. The remains of a woman and a child discovered in barrels in 1985 haunted investigators, but their identities remained unknown. But in May of 2000, a cold case detective made a pivotal decision. He returned to the site where the barrel first was found, and astonishingly, he found another barrel just 100 yards away, containing the remains of 2 more young girls. One was estimated to be around 2 or 3 years old, and the other was just a year old. Wrapped in plastic sheeting, both had suffered blunt force trauma. The horror of Bear Brook was far from over. As investigators revisited the 1985 victims, DNA testing revealed a heartbreaking connection. The adult woman was the mother of 2 children found in the barrels. The third child, however, was not related. A forensic artist created composites of all 4 victims who would become collectively known as the Allenstown Four. Meanwhile, in Richmond, California, Terry Rasmussen was living under yet another alias, Larry Vanner. In 2002, he was dating a young chemist named Usen Yoon. When Yoon suddenly vanished in June that year, her friends and family grew suspicious. They had always found Vanner odd, and their fears were soon confirmed. Rasmussen, now using the Vanner alias, was brought in for questioning. His fingerprints matched those of Curtis Mayo Kimball, a name linked to an outstanding warrant for child abandonment charges dating back to 1986. When police searched Yoon's home, they found a disturbing scene in the garage, a mound of cat litter concealing Yoon's remains. In November 2002, Rasmussen was arrested for Yoon's murder and the parole violation sentenced under the name Kimball. But police had yet to realize the true extent of the horrors he had committed. The Allenstown Four, however, remain unidentified until citizen detectives took up the case. Inspired by true crime investigator Billy Jensen's book, Chase Darkness With Me, librarian Rebecca Heath and amateur investigator Rhonda Randall began to dig deep. Their efforts paid off when Heath rediscovered a message board post from 1999 on Ancestry.com. A woman was searching for her missing family members, Marlise Honeychurch, and her 2 daughters, Marie Vaughn and Sarah McWaters. They had vanished in 1978 after leaving California with a man named Rasmussen. In 2019, 3 of the Allenstown Four finally had names: Marlise Honeychurch, Marie Vaughn, and Sarah McWaters. But the identity of the 4th victim remained unknown. Genetic genealogist Barbara Ray Venter took on the challenge of identifying the abandoned girl Rasmussen had called Lisa. Using DNA from Lisa and reverse engineering her family tree, Ray Venter uncovered her true identity, Dawn, the daughter of Denise Bowden. While Bowden remained missing, presumed murdered, her daughter had survived under Rasmussen's control until 1986. The timeline of Allentown 4 murders became clear. They were likely killed between 1977 and 1985, when Marlise Honeychurch last seen in 1978. A pattern emerged. Rasmussen didn't target strangers, but rather his girlfriends and their children. He even murdered his own biological daughter while keeping another child as a pawn in his twisted game. Terry Rasmussen, a man who lived under countless aliases, murdered and abducted and deceived his way through 3 decades. Though he died in prison in 2010 without ever facing justice for most of his crimes, the legacy of the Chameleon Killer endures. Authorities continue to suspect him in other unsolved homicides and missing person cases as his dark secrets slowly come to light. Even though Terry Rasmussen was a man whose life would become synonymous with deception and murder, he once served his country. From 1961 to 1967, he was stationed at bases along the West Coast and in Japan as a member of the U.S. Navy. Did the horrors of war leave a lasting mark on him? Did his time in the war plant seeds of the menace he would later become? These are some of the questions that linger. The impact of his actions, however, is undeniable. The families of his victims, those who have survived his brutality, are left grappling with unimaginable trauma. The emotional scars of these murders run deep, and the path to healing is long. Survivors and the loved ones of victims are often left dealing with profound mental health challenges: PTSD, depression, anxiety, prolonged grief, and more. These are not just abstract terms. They represent real, daily battles for those left in the wake of Rasmussen's violence. Inside Killer Minds examines not just the infamous cases, but also the lesser-known stories of those who harbor dangerous psychopathic traits. Psychopathy is a more widespread condition than many realize. It's estimated that 30% of the population exhibits some level of psychopathic traits, a startling figure when compared to conditions like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Yet despite its prevalence, psychopathy remains difficult to diagnose. There are no medical tests, brain scans, or genetic screenings that can identify it. And this is what makes psychopathy so particularly hard to diagnose. Those with higher levels of psychopathy are twice as likely to commit severe violence, yet can blend seamlessly into society. They often appear charming, intelligent, and ordinary, masking the darkness that's within. In examining Terry Rasmussen, we see this devastating impact of psychopathy on both the individual and society. His ability to deceive, manipulate, and destroy lives was not immediately apparent. But as the layers of his life were peeled away, the true nature of his evil revealed. His story serves as a haunting reminder of the unseen dangers that lurk beneath the surface. This episode is not just about uncovering the crimes of a killer. It's about understanding the profound impact these crimes have on the families and the communities left behind. It's about the enduring trauma, the search for justice, and the hope that those affected can find the help that they need to cope with the intense loss and tragedy.